finally get some top 25 matchups. I know we had some good ones the first week, but last week, man, that was one that'll put you to sleep when you talk about the matchups, and it almost put Alabama to sleep over here watching a 28-point victory, 38-10. But this week fires it back up. ESPN 105.9. Bo Bounds out of Jackson, Mississippi. Bo, let's break this game down. Let's talk about Alabama and Ole Miss. What do you see early in this game? Vegas got it at about 10 points. Are they close?
Oh, that's a good question. If Ole Miss gets can Ole Miss get their tempo going against Alabama? And last year Alabama kept giving up football. So, and Ole Miss had some explosive plays, as you know, one that bounced off somebody and straight in the hands of a Ole Miss wide receiver. So I don't expect all the flukiness, and I don't expect Alabama to give away the football. So the two defensive lines should have an opportunity to dominate throughout the day. Bama looks a little leaky. Looks like, they have some holes on the offensive line. Now, 6 weeks from now, they may not. And then Ole Miss does too. So, Ron, I expect a lot of back and forth early, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is extremely difficult to put together a 10 or 11-play drive on either defense early. And then it depends on who makes a mistake first.
Where's the weakness at on this Ole Miss team?
Well, I don't know if the offensive line is going to be a weakness throughout the year, but right now they're trying to grow and develop and find chemistry and figure things out, all right? And then on the back end, Ryan, they're struggling depth-wise at corner, and they have new faces at safety, and they may be talented, but they're not ready for, Alabama-type receivers and slot guys and O.J. Howard. So if Jalen Hurts can deliver the football in that atmosphere, then Alabama will be able to move the football. And I fully expect Coach Kiffin and Coach Saban to get after them there and to go vertical and to go down the seams and see what they get, because Ole Miss is, one, Kendarius Webster was their best defensive back, and he's gone for the year. And two, they were already young back there with Trey Elston and Mike Hilton graduating. So I would have to believe that they'll pick their spots now. They don't need to. I'm sure Lane's going to be ready to rip and run early, and Coach Saban may keep him, under wraps for a few series and let everybody break a sweat and maybe some punts back and forth, and then they'll pick their spots. But hey, who knows? They may let it rip from the start. But it's the offensive line, running back, and the secondary, Ron, to answer your question.
Bo, I always go back and I look at what Ole Miss has been able to pull off, beating Alabama 2 years in a row, and I always think about it, and I know it's a different offense, but, they're one really super back, maybe not even a super back, maybe just a little bit above average back in this league. I think if they could add that dimension to their offense, how good would this team really be?
Well, I agree with you. Look, they would love to have a 6'1", 225, 30-pound guy who was ready today. I don't know what Penniman will be, their true freshman later, but he's not ready. And Akeem Judd's not that guy. He's a nice player, Ron, but he's going to have his hands full of monsters pursuing him all day. So I agree with you. Look, if they had Geis from LSU, or maybe even Damian Harris from Bama, or some of these other guys, who knows? But they have to make sure that they can. I'll be interested to see what Bama does guard to guard on them, and how Ole Miss can handle them. And look, Kelly's fantastic at times. How much time will he have? Ole Miss, look, they're notorious for getting the ball out of their QB's hands. So I expect them to go bubble screens, speed sweeps, and, quick hit, short game, intermediate, make Alabama run sideline to sideline and see if they can chew up yards and move the chains, because I don't think they're going to be able to stand back there and run Akeem and Chad. Now, Kelly may break containment, Ron, on some plays when some guys are not open, and he may find a space and he can eat up 15 yards. But I'm not sure that they'll have a really successful running game against this Alabama defense that looks amazing right now.
We're talking right now to Bo Bounds, ESPN 105.9. They're in Jackson, Mississippi, as we're talking about Alabama and Ole Miss as we continue to look ahead to this game. Let me ask you about the defensive line here. It seems like this group is very talented for Ole Miss, and maybe what they don't have in secondary, they can make up for getting after the quarterback. This team seems like they're pretty aggressive up front.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, look, when they're slanting and they hit, they can disrupt you, and they can rack up, TFLs. But when they miss, you can go counter and misdirection like Florida State did some, and you can gobble up 15 to 25 yards. But yes, Breland Speaks is the real deal. DJ Jones is the real deal. And Benito Jones and Isaac Gross are also fantastic players, and Marquise Haynes is coming off the edge. So they like their personnel there, Ron, and they will disrupt Jalen Hurts. Now, I'm not saying they'll do it, obviously, every single play or every single possession, but there will be plays during the game where they will disrupt Jalen Hurts and whoever is back there with him. So Bama, has to get their act together as far as giving Jalen Hurts some pass protection and some time to go down the field on that young, inexperienced secondary, and I can't wait to see it. And all these matchups to me are just intriguing and fascinating all the way across the board with these two teams, because I would not be surprised for it to be a close game.
Does Chad Kelly, in your opinion, does this team live and die with him? In other words, he cannot have an average game. He's got to have a great game to beat Alabama. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, unless Alabama decides to pull something weird again and 5 turnovers.
Give them 5 turnovers. Yeah, I just don't see that happening. Yes, Chad Kelly has to be he's going to have to be fantastic on Saturday. Now, look, if Bama's bogged down too, Ron, then this could become a field position and field goal game. I can't wait to see how many times each team gets in the red zone, and then how many explosive plays the two teams. I know they're both loaded at wide receiver. I get that. My question is, I feel like Kelly's going to be able to get the ball out. Now, evidently, Alabama's had some struggled at times to point of attack, take some of those guys down. I've heard that that's not going to happen again. Ole Miss, on the other hand, if Bama is willing to do bubble screens and stuff, Ole Miss has got a bunch of young kids out there that were just at their senior prom. So you got some grown men at wide receiver for Alabama. What a great opportunity. Just if you make one guy miss, boom, you may be going for 20, you may be going for 50. So I can't wait to see what Kiffin and Saban allows him to do, but what Kiffin puts together to see what they can do on that inexperienced secondary. And how accurate will Jalen Hurts be? On the road, first road game, true freshman. But if it's a field possession, field goal kicking game, which it may, that may play out, then it's going to be wild. But Alabama, if they impose their will on the defensive side of football, that may give them the edge and enough to get in there and get out with a W.
What do you see? What as far as the score? Where do you see this game ending up at? I mean, I know you said close, but I mean,
they're going to light up this. I just don't know if they're going to light up the scoreboard, Ron. And by saying that doesn't mean that I don't think there'll be some big plays, and that Ole Miss can go down the field with some explosive plays, and that the Ole Miss secondary will lose containment for Bama to do some big stuff. But I see 24-21.
Wow.
21-17. I just think it could be very difficult unless Bama just comes out and rolls. I think it could be really difficult for the two offenses because, man, the two defensive lines are nasty. Now, obviously, after that, Bama's much better at linebacker and secondary than Ole Miss is at linebacker and secondary. Ole Miss has some talent. It's just not quite where you want it. It sure looks to me, and you tell me, it looks to me like, and they'll get better, but Alabama is almost operating at optimal level on the defensive side of the football. And I don't think Ole Miss is.
Yeah, and here's the matchup that I want to watch is Jeremy Pruitt. All we've heard about how great he is against fastball teams, up-tempo teams, okay?
Right.
Alabama has worked for several years to get into position right now to put the personnel out. This is the fastest defense I've ever seen under Nick Saban. It just is. And I want to see how that lines up against a true up-tempo team. Western Kentucky tried a little bit of it. USC, no, not really. I mean, a few plays. But Ole Miss is true up-tempo team. I want to see the matchup. I want to see how Alabama truly handles that, and I think this is Jeremy Pruitt's first big test.
Oh, no. But I wonder if Freeze is going to slow it down at all. And the reason why is, he can't wear out his defense, right? They were blowing and going in the first half against Florida State. Then all of a sudden, Florida State adjusted, and then his defense was done, spent. So, man, that thing, that is the chicken and the egg as far as go, because the Ole Miss defense in the second half of Florida State was gassed, and it was, as you know, you watched it, it was over. And that's when DeAndre Francois, who's also young like Jalen, he's got one more year under his belt with the red shirt. But that's when Florida State really had an opportunity to go down the seams and go down the field and start hurting Ole Miss. So I just wonder if that will come into play late in the third and going in early in midway into the fourth quarter for Alabama. That's what Alabama has to hope for. But I like what you're saying about Jeremy Pruitt against Hugh Freeze as far as offense and defensive matchup.
This is a matchup that we're going to be watching this weekend, coming up 2:30 on Saturday afternoon. We'll have the call.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
Do you think Bama can run the football on Ole Miss?
That is a great question, Bo.
I wonder that because I expect them to get better this week because he's going to demand it.
Sure.
But I just wonder if they can. Can Alabama run the football on Ole Miss?
That's the $1 million question. I mean, because they haven't been able to run it on USC. Nick Saban even talked about that. He said the numbers were inflated because they got a couple of big runs. They had some success, but they really struggled running the football. And I don't know if that's game planning, because they may be looking at Ole Miss and saying, you know what, we can take our shots against this secondary. We can go some quick passes. We can beat these guys, because Alabama's wide receivers are top-notch. It's a really solid unit. Ardarius Stewart's really come into his own. O.J. Howard, Calvin Ridley had over 100 yards. I mean, so this wide receiver unit's talented. That may be the difference in the game, and maybe we're trying to oversimplify this thing. It may be it's wide receivers against secondary may be the advantage that Alabama needs, but offensive line.
That is the advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, and then can they pass? Can they pass protect long enough for Jalen Hurts to figure out what he wants to do in a very difficult environment? But good grief, if you have receivers, and I'm not saying this will happen, but if you do have receivers running wide open, then you're talking about feasting on that young, inexperienced Ole Miss secondary.